This is Brian Pritchard, FYN, FetcherNews.com, Election 2012, and we're here today at the Apple Mountain Playhouse in Ellijay, Georgia, and we're going to talk with Sheriff Stacy Nicholson. Sheriff Nicholson, thanks for coming and sitting down. The whole idea of Election 2012 at FYN is to get the most information for voters come July 31st. And we've sit down with all with the exception of one of your opponents that refused to sit down with us, and we've talked to them, and now today we're going to give you an opportunity to share with the citizens of Gilmer County what your plan is if re-elected. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Brian, for doing this program. I think it's a great service to the community that you're putting this information out there for those that choose to take advantage of it. My name is Stacy Nicholson. I am the current elected sheriff in Gilmer County. I'm on my 8th year as sheriff. I took office January 1st, 2005 and was elected in 2004. I've worked for the Gilmer County Sheriff's Office for the past 21 years. I started when I was 19 years old and have started as a detention officer, was promoted to uniform patrol, worked in patrol for about a year, became a detective, later became the chief detective, and that's kind of where I stayed for the next several years until I ran for office in 2004 and was elected. I am a lifelong resident of Gilmer County. I live in the Carter section of the county with my wife Cynthia and my 3 children, and I am running for re-election this year, and I would greatly appreciate everyone's support and vote.
Well, Sheriff Nicholson, we have sit down with the other candidates for sheriff of Gilmer County, and I've gone to your website just like I've gone to other candidates' websites, and I've pulled some information on your website, and let's jump right into the thing that came up every time. Let's talk about the budget for the sheriff's office.
Okay.
That is the number one thing that came up in all of the interviews I did with the opponents was the budget. What was the sheriff's department over budget last year?
Well, Brian, and I've watched the other interviews as well, and it's been a common declaration that I was over budget at $323,000 last year, when in fact that's incorrect. I was over budget last year $173,000 with one way you look at it, and another way you look at it, I believe it was $204,000. And I know that you're sitting there with a look on your face, what are you talking about? I have a budget for the sheriff's office, a budget for the jail, and a budget for the 911 center, which I control. Those 3 budgets combined, last year I was over budget $204,000. Now, a lot of the comparisons that are being made in this election, a lot of the facts and figures that's being thrown out there are facts and figures of just using the sheriff's office budget, the sheriff in the jail, the typical sheriff's office budget. I'm one of the few sheriffs in North Georgia that operates the 911 center. So if you're to compare apples to oranges, you have to compare sheriff's office and jail to sheriff's office and jail instead of Gilmer County to Pickens County. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, why do the other counties not operate? Do they not operate their own 911 service?
The counties do, but the 911 center would be operated by a director.
Okay.
In 2005, right after I took office, the commission board asked me to take the 911 center in under the sheriff's office umbrella, and I did that.
Well, so you're saying when everybody says the sheriff's office is over a certain amount on a budget, there's actually 3 parts that make that number up that they're trying to get to.
That's correct.
And to be clear, you have the detention center, the sheriff's office, and the 911.
That's
makes
correct.
up the total. Okay. Why was it over budget?
Well, Brian, there's a lot of factors that go into why we're over budget. I can't sit down and pinpoint to you one or two things. Last year, in 2011, we ended the winter with a snow and ice storm. We had a tornado hit the county. We had a plane crash. All of those issues incurred a lot of overtime. A lot of overtime. We also were under budgeted last year on gasoline, on fuel. I asked for more, and that specific line item, and we went over. I told the commissioners, I believe you were in the meeting, the very meeting that I told the commissioners, you're not giving me enough money to operate. That was one of the line items that we went over on. But we also, in the detention center last year, we had an inmate that had to be flown it was either Erlanger or Atlanta Medical Center, I don't remember off the top of my head, by Life Flight. That's about a $20,000 expenditure that's not budgeted for. In law enforcement, you budget for everything that you can, and then you have a contingency for things that you can't predict that's going to happen, but you know that they're out there and they're going to happen. When that contingency is not built into the budget, unless you have a perfect year, you're going to be over budget.
Well, let me ask you a question this way, and you would know, I told all the other candidates that sit in the same place. In 2011, I didn't miss a budget meeting.
That's right.
And you're aware of that. I didn't miss one budget meeting, I didn't miss one workshop, and I didn't miss the 2012 budget meeting in November for this year's budget. So I was there, and I seen the chairman, Commissioner Sanford, and the other commissioners put the pressure on you that they did, saying that lightly. I guess, did you accept a budget that you knew you couldn't hit? Did they? Now, before you answer, and I've said this, I watched the clerk of courts, I watched the tax commissioner, I watched fire and rescue. I watched every one of them get the pressure. Hey, you got to give me back another $80,000. You got to give us back another $60,000. So I understand that, and I did see the pressure. Did they pressure you into a budget that you couldn't hit, or where? I mean, what?
Brian, I don't think it was. I wouldn't classify it as pressuring me into a budget that I couldn't hit. It was not that. The commissioners were what they were doing was the right thing. They had to get down to a level with the overall county budget. They were trying to hit that mark. They were trying to hit it evenly with percentage cuts through all of the county departments, and they were trying to get mine down. Now, I came in, if you remember, I came in and I said, okay, I see what you're trying to do. I know what you're trying to do. I knew it before I walked in there, and we went to cutting. But if you remember, there was a point in time where I said, guys, I can't cut no more. If I cut any more, I'm going to be putting the county at risk, and they asked for more money. We were under budgeted on the fuel line item. It was brought up. I'm not blaming the commissioners. They're trying to do the right thing, and so am I. But to operate a law enforcement agency, you have to have a certain amount of money in certain areas. When you're looking at probably any budget, but certainly in a law enforcement budget, 75 to 80% of that budget is going to be salaries. It just is. And 75 to 80%, and I've not put a calculator to it recently, 75 to 80% of our budget is salaries and benefits, you should say. What's left is the amount of money that you spend on fuel, travel, training, in the jail, food for the inmates, that sort of thing. And You know, we got down to a point in 2011, and it was basically me fighting to not further cut employees within the department.
Well, you know, I will say, not bringing any names into the budget meeting, but I did hear another department head say the budget allows for no disasters, and you really can't budget in disasters. So you're saying in 2011 we had 3 pretty major disasters that there's no way you could budget in, and the Rich Mountain Wilderness plane crash was one of those that I understand you don't get any money back. You don't recoup any money on that service.
No.
Let's move to something else that was brought up 3 times, and the only reason, Sheriff Nicholson, I bring these up is everybody I sat down with brought them up, so I thought they were worthy of asking you the question. The Sheriff's Department's office, excuse me, I apologize, the Sheriff's Office morale.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just, I don't know, just morale. What, I mean, everybody keeps coming to me and saying the morale is poor in the Sheriff's Office. Answer that.
I don't feel like the morale is poor in the Sheriff's Office. And I base that on the feedback that I got from the some of the folks that have gone through three classes now of our Citizens Law Enforcement Academy. When they do their ride-alongs with the deputies, we're not monitoring that. I mean, I'm not sitting there listening to what they're talking about for 12 hours in the car, and almost every single individual that has gone through that program has come back and said, you have got some great employees and they love you. Now, you know, I don't know. Maybe they're just saying that because they think that those folks are going to come back and tell me that. But I don't think the morale is to the point that it's being, you know, discussed by my opponents. I'll say this. Sheriff's Office employees, nor have any county employee had a raise in Gilmer County in 5 years. Now, Sheriff's Office employees throughout the state, I've not surveyed every single one, but sheriffs talk to one another. Sheriff's Office employees throughout the state are having to do the exact same things we're having to do to cut budgets and cut spending, and they've not had raises either. That creates a kind of that's a morale getter sometimes. But my guys come to work. They seem to be happy at work. They they do their job very well, and I don't think the morale is that low. What I would challenge the viewers that has heard Tommy Hunter, Shane Bowman, Leon Davenport declare that the morale in the Sheriff's Office is so low. What I would challenge the folks that you're trying to make a decision who you're going to vote for, don't talk to me. Find a deputy. Pick a deputy out. They're all over town. Pick one out and ask him how he feels. That's what I would say to the morale. Well, that's how sure I am that the morale is not where they say it is.
Well, why do you think your opponents have picked the 2 major things to me when I sit down, and there's things that are broken down? Why do you think that the 2 major things that they have picked is morale and the budget? I mean, why do you think those are the things? One of them says bring integrity back to the Sheriff's Office. I mean, why do you think that this is the theme of your opponents?
Obviously somewhere, and I'm saying this jokingly, Brian, somebody wrote a book on how to run for sheriff against the incumbent. And the 2 things you attack in a low, in a down economy, you attack the budget. And then you always attack the incumbent on morale. It's the same thing that's being said in Cherokee County. It's the same thing that's being said in Oconee County. It's the same thing that's being said in the next county and the next county. Spending too much money and the morale's bad. You know, I've got some concerns about some of the things my opponents have said. should they get elected, it kind of scares me, some of the things they've said. But
well, some of the things they said, I mean to interrupt you, but some of the things they said, I would think most of the citizens out there, and something we will talk about, I know they're concerned about the budget, they're concerned about the morale of their sheriff's department, but I think they're concerned about public safety. So are any of the statements that you heard in any of the interviews give you concern for the citizens' public safety?
Yes, absolutely.
What might have you heard that we discussed that would give you concern about public safety?
This is a almost quote, I can do the job with less money, a lot less money. Brian, you've sat there through at least one full year of budget meetings, budget amendment meetings, budget discussions. You have heard me explain over and over and over where we're at with our budget. I don't think that a better job can be done with less money. Not at all. And it concerns me for the public safety of the citizens. I don't spend money just so I can spend money. Brian, if I spent money on just to be spending money, I would have a brand new vehicle. I'd be sporting a brand new vehicle. I've got the oldest vehicle in the sheriff's office. To my knowledge, I've got the oldest vehicle of any sheriff in the state of Georgia. And I'm happy to have that vehicle if my deputies can have the cars and the equipment they need. If I was not concerned about public safety, I would be doing things like buying me a new car.
You know, when the budget meetings were going on and the amendment meetings in 2011, I came to you and I asked this question, and I can find it in an article that was written in 2011. I asked you, with these budget cuts, would it stop you from operating the sheriff's office in a way that public safety would take a back seat? And I don't want to quote you, but you said something like, absolutely not, that you're not going to look, and I don't want to put words in your mouth because the budget is a big issue, but if there's a public safety or a crime or something going on, you're not going to run and get the budget and see if there was enough money to go arrest the bad guy or the bad lady or whatever. Is that down the line of what you were kindly told me?
That's not verbatim, but that's...
No, it's not. But it's not. I didn't mean quote. But I was just... I had asked you earlier in the year, would the budget compromise you providing public safety? Earlier this year, getting around to it, that's what I asked you, if the budget would compromise public safety, and you didn't say verbatim or quote, but you said something like, you're not going to run and get the budget to see if you could protect the public.
That's right. You can't do that. You've got to do what you've got to do. Sometimes what's happening is going to mandate that you're not going to have the money to do what you're doing, but you've got to do it anyway. What do you do? Do you tell folks we're not coming? Do you tell folks we're not going to patrol, we're not going to work on Wednesdays? No. You go patrol on Wednesdays 7 days a week. You go do your job, and you do it as best you can. And if you remember what I told the commissioners, now I'm not saying, if you remember what I told the commissioners in 2011, you're cutting me below what it will take to operate. And we were arguing about somewhere between $175,000 and $200,000. Now I'm not saying this to say that Stacy was pinpoint on the dollar amount because he can foresee the future. That's not the case, but we can budget pretty close. But how much money were we over budget? Sheriff's office and jail, we were over budget $173,000. Now I will say this, that's less than 4% of an error in the overall budget. I know it's $173,000. There's some things happened that we couldn't help. When you have to fly someone out to one of these hospitals with life flight, that's $20,000, and we don't get a break on that. We've had to do it, I think, 3 to 4 times since I've been sheriff.
You say the budget, is the sheriff's office the largest budget in the county?
Yes.
It is the largest budget in the county.
Let me say this about that. I don't know if it was, I don't think it was said during your series of interviews, but it has been said, and you know, I'm doing my recon, I'm paying attention to what everybody's saying, and there's a lot of things that's being said that's simply not true. Going back to comparing apples to apples instead of apples to oranges. You know, the sheriff's office is 33 1/3% of the overall county budget, as compared to other counties that might be lower, or some counties that might be higher. That's incorrect. The sheriff's office and jail is 28%, 5% less than what they're saying, of the overall county budget. When you add the 911 center, then it is 33%. But most sheriff's offices are running at about 1/3 of the overall county budget without the 911 center, because they are not responsible for the 911 center. I am. So when I look at numbers, I include them typically until I start to comparing, and then you compare apples to apples. You don't compare apples to oranges. We're 28% of the overall county budget. Another thing that's been said, looking at a per capita cost, that's a big thing this year. I've never heard of that until this year. Per capita, what law enforcement costs per capita, per person in the county. And you take the overall budget and you divide by the population. And that's being used in other counties by opponents of the incumbents, and they're trying to use it against them. Well, it's been said that Gilmer County Sheriff's Office is $190 per capita, as opposed to Lumpkin County, who's 171, and Fannin County, I believe, is 127. Brian, I actually brought that piece of information. I actually brought that because I've done my own study. I just can't seem to find it. But here it is. Fannin County is $110 per capita. Lumpkin County is $169 per capita. Pickens County is a good comparison to Gilmer County. We're very close in population, and we're close in the things we offer. They're $176 per capita. Gilmer County is not $190 per capita. We are $163. But if you want to go ahead and throw in that $173,000, we were over budget last year. We're $167. But we're still almost $23 per person, per capita, less than what is being thrown around. And I actually brought that piece of documentation for you that you might use at some point in time. I don't know.
Well, let me ask you, couple more things that were brought out, or I don't want to say brought out. I'm real cautious the way I put it, because brought out implies something, so my apology there. A couple more things that were discussed when I sat down with the opponents. You've had this. I've heard people come to the podium at the commissioners' meeting. I've heard people come to you in public. Park the cars. Tell the citizens. Tell us about your opponents. Bring it up. It has been an issue. I know it's a struggle. Tell us a little bit about parking the cars, where you stand on that, and what did you do last year to try to alleviate that gas budget problem. You were over on gas. You did go to the commissioners and say you didn't have enough budget for fuel. I remember that very well sitting here. But park the cars. Explain the cars, the take-home cars, to the citizens.
We up until mid last year, sometime around this time last year, we had always operated a take-home car policy in county and out of the county. Last year, we were over budget. We were going to be over budget on fuel. We saw it coming. We were running over almost on day one. So I had fought that. I don't know how, I don't remember how long that you've actually been doing Fetch Your News. But I know I've seen you at commissioners meetings for at least a couple of 3 years. And I had fought that because I feel like it's a very good program. When you're only paying $13 an hour starting out for a deputy, and he can go less than an hour away and start out at $18 or $19 an hour. Let me pause. What was the one, why did Tommy Hunter say he didn't work here? Why did he say he'd not toughed it out here and worked in Gilmer County? What was the one, it was a one-word answer, Brian. Do you remember what it was?
Well, first of all, are you asking the questions?
It was money. No, I don't ask a question I can't answer. It was money.
Yes, sir, it was.
When you can't offer that money, you have to give to attract good people that's going to stay with you. You have to offer them something. Now, I think everybody except for Shane Bowman agrees that it's a good idea for deputies to take their cars home within the county. Shane said he would park them. I'm not going to park the cars going home to deputies that live inside the county because that's a crime deterrent. With a patrol car sitting in the house in a neighborhood, it's a crime deterrent for that neighborhood. And I've got deputies that live all over this county. But the ones going out of the county, we parked them. We parked them. Now, I still have, I believe, 5, possibly 6 deputies that drive home. My chief deputy lives just across the Pickens County line. He doesn't live in Holly Springs. He lives just across the Pickens County line into Cherokee County and Ball Ground. He drives his car home. He has to respond just like I do. He might be tied up. I might be tied up. We're never both going to be tied up. When the stuff hits the fan, one of us, if not both of us, are going to be there, and we're going to be there within the time it takes to get in our car at home and be there. I have an employee that lives out of the county that's my crisis negotiator. He's one of 2 in the agency, and he's the only one that has any experience. And he has successfully negotiated and brought armed people out of many homes since he's been doing that job. He lives out of the county. Well, he takes his car home. He responds directly to scenes. And I've got a watch commander and a division commander that drive their cars just across the line in Fannin County. But we parked the cars, the vast majority of the take-home cars. We parked them. Within 3 weeks of parking those cars, guess what happened?
No, I don't know what happened.
We lost 5 employees. 5 employees resigned. They could not afford to work here and not have that take-home car. Now, a positive thing is during that same period of time, a positive thing is one deputy that had left here, and he left here on very good terms. He was happy when he left, but he wanted more. He wanted to make more money. And he went to the Marietta Police Department. And he worked there for a year, and he did well. He did very well. They didn't want him to leave, but he came back to the Gilmer County Sheriff's Office recently. He took a $6 an hour pay cut to come back. Had several folks, well, I've had 4 or 5. I think I've had 5 individuals that have left the Sheriff's Office and went somewhere else to the greener pastures. Or maybe that wasn't the case. They just left because something changing in their life. They came back. I don't think a department that's wrought with bad morale are going to have employees that's doing well where they went to coming back because they missed this place.
Let me ask you, let me put this together and just tell me if I'm correct, Sheriff. You're in favor of the take-home car in the county as a crime deterrent. Did I hear that?
That's correct.
Okay. And I did make a statement last week in an interview. There's a deputy that doesn't live a half mile from me, and I pass it, and just something about it I'm okay with. I want to be clear on that statement. Deputies outside of the county, you parked.
We parked. I'm still in favor of it. but we parked them for the fuel cost.
But the
Fuel savings.
But the officers that are in the command ranks outside of the county, you feel it's necessary for them to have the car to do their job?
Absolutely. It's not because they're my buddy, as it's been insinuated. It's not because, well, they've just reached a certain rank in life, so they get to have their car. That's not it. Those individuals are on call to this county 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and nothing ever happens during the day while they're here. I don't say nothing ever happens. It does. A lot of stuff happens while they're here. But they have to respond here, and they have to respond directly to scenes. And them responding directly to a scene. Here's why, and I understand that a couple of my opponents don't get this. But did you notice Tommy Hunter didn't bring this up? I think Tommy Hunter gets this. There's a reason why you have command staff going as quickly as they can to a critical incident. Well, certainly a crisis negotiator. That's to possibly save a deputy or a citizen's life, to try to de-escalate the situation. But you have command go into these situations to get control of it and to try to make sure nothing happens that the taxpayers of this county won't be able to write the check for if it goes wrong. That's why they go there.
All right,
that's why they have the cars.
Let's go a couple more directions that have been brought up. And you brought up several of your opponents' names. Is there a lot of turnover at the sheriff's office in personnel? Do you feel there's a lot of turnover? Is it on the average of other sheriff's departments? Is there a particular reason? That was brought up. So I'd like to know where you feel.
Brian, instead of me fumble, I've got information I'm going to give you at the end of this. And if I'm lying to you right now just for the camera purposes, you can come back and do an addendum to this interview and say Stacy Nicholson lied to me. But to keep me from fumbling around through this, I'm gonna explain the turnover. I'm going to talk about the turnover. No, it is average. It is average. I believe it's the University of North Carolina published a study that they did. And I hope I'm right on the University of North Carolina. But I have the information in here. The average turnover for a sheriff's office in the study time that they did was 12.7%. Ours, if you look at it as a whole, over the 4-year period, was about 14%, which is right just above that average. Now, Tommy, I believe, and I may be wrong on this, I believe I remember Tommy saying we'd had 69 employees leave the sheriff's office.
I don't have it with me, but he made a number. He did,
and I think, and I may be wrong about this, and Tommy, if I am, Tommy, I'm sorry, I apologize, but it's 59. The number's 59. And when you start deducting, we had 2 individuals die that worked here. We had 4 that went out on a medical retirement. This is not retirement, but medical purposes is why they left. I believe we terminated 13 employees for cause, and 2 or 3 retired. And I believe the number is 21 all that adds up to. If you take 59 and subtract 21, we've had 38 people in 4 years leave the sheriff's office, and some of them didn't just flat out resign. Some of them didn't have, well, they had a choice, resign or be terminated. Now some folks just flat out resigned. I'm not going to say that life's 1,000% peachy. Some did resign, and some resigned mad, but some had to resign. But are we any higher than everyone else? No, we're not. Tommy said that Forsyth County had 93, and we had 59, and we just say easy numbers. We got, just say easy numbers. We had 60 leave the agency. We've got 100 people. He had 90 leave Forsyth County, and they have 300 people. I think Forsyth County is a more troubling number than Gilmer County because of the one word that Tommy Hunter said in his interview. They pay so much more money than we do. Sometimes I don't blame my guys. If they can go somewhere and drive 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and make $2, $3, $4, $5 an hour more than what they make here, how can you argue with that? All you can do is try to do something, do a little something to keep those individuals here. And I have a loyal core group of individuals that are with me, and that core group is growing.
Well, out of the three candidates that sit down with me, Sheriff Nicholson, I had decided that I didn't think it would be right if I allowed them on camera to say certain things and not allow you to answer for certain things. So I do want you to know that my questions that I've come up with in the topics I want to go over, basically I felt you ought to have the opportunity to answer some of the things. Now, in the three candidates, I couldn't put everything together, but I tried to go back and look at the common themes. So I really got two more common themes that I heard in three interviews that I'd like to address, and then we'll move into some public safety things. Outstanding warrants. Mm-hmm. One of your opponents said that you've got 4,000, or I don't know, it's 1,400. I forget the number. I don't even want to put a number, but they made it was an enormous amount of outstanding warrants, and actually one of the comments was that mothers couldn't get their child support because warrants were sitting not being served, or one thing after another. I mean, it is on video what was said, so we'll go back on that. But outstanding warrants, where does Gilmer County stand in that number?
The picture was painted, Brian, I've seen the interview. The picture was painted that these warrants were being taken by civilians, and the sheriff's office is just filing them away in a filing cabinet, never to look at them or to touch them again. That is absolutely 100% false. The warrants, when the warrants are taken, first of all, we served, last year, Gilmer County Sheriff's Office served 558 warrants, and we made 250 further attempts where a warrant wasn't served. So that's 808 attempts to serve warrants last year in the midst of everything else the deputies do. When the warrants are taken, they are filed in a filing cabinet. When the warrants are taken, they are entered on the GCIC, NCIC computers, but prior to them being filed away, attempts are made to serve the warrants. Now, if I can tell you, Brian, we're no different than any other sheriff's office within the United States. There's studies been done on this, and I can give you the information that it says. We prioritize. The bad warrants are served immediately, or we dog them until we do get them served. The medium warrants, a higher priority is put on them than the low-risk warrants and low-risk warrants, but they're all attempted. You make 2 or 3 attempts at least. But Tommy Hunter says we have 1,671 warrants in the sheriff's office, and we're doing nothing about it. We do have 1,671 warrants, give or take a few that might have been served or taken since that interview was done. I went and myself, I looked through those warrants. The high majority of the warrants that are sitting there and have not been served are out of county warrants. A vast majority are, and this I'm using general statements here because I don't want to rope myself into something that can come up and say one minute little detail and say, aha, I got you. But the vast majority of them are bench warrants for probate court, some to Superior Court. But there are no smoking gun, bad public enemy #1 warrants in those drawers that have not been attempted, or nor have been not even attempted. They've been served. The child support warrants that we hold, most of them, about, I don't know, it was last year. Last year I was notified by the Department of Human Resources and the Georgia Sheriff's Association. The emails came on the same day, or emails, or I don't know, letters, maybe it was letters, that said, hold off serving these warrants. There's a new case, there's a Supreme Court or Court of Appeals case law that says the wording on the child support warrants is bad, which makes the warrant or the pickup order bad. So we had to hold, but we had a bunch of them. We just had to hold them. Probably where we are most negligent with our warrants is not purging the old warrants. When I look through the warrants, there's a lot of warrants from the early and mid-90s that, you know, need to be gone through, but we've just not done that. But we have made attempts to serve the warrants as they come in. Now, like I said, there's a national study that says that law enforcement agencies all across the United States, they serve the bad warrants, and we do too. We make attempts to serve the other warrants. We do that, they do that. But you have to prioritize. We don't have the budget to just have deputies running around all over Georgia serving warrants. Okay. Another thing I want to say about that is this. Tommy makes it out that it is a huge, it's ungodly that we have 1,671 warrants. But he couldn't tell you how many warrants that Forsyth County, the agency he's worked in for the last 18 years, he couldn't tell you how many warrants they had. Do you know how many warrants they had? I know.
No, I don't.
You know how we know? We picked up the phone and called and checked.
How many did he have in Forsyth?
Approximately 2,700. You know how many Hall County has? Approximately 7,000. Do you know how, and see that those counties are not really our direct counties. Do you know how many Fannin County has?
I'm listening.
Over 1,600. Fannin County, over 1,600. You know how many Pickens County has? Over 1,500. Do you see that we're about average?
Considering your research is correct, yes, and that is one of the reasons I asked Mr. Hunter that day where Forsyth was in comparison, because I thought the number was high, but then I also have seen where somebody's picked up out in Arizona when they for a minor speeding ticket, and when they're running Arizona, they're wanted in Ohio for a murder maybe, or even something like that, or wanted for something in 3 other states. I do understand how a warrant can get away from an office, but I don't know the details of how that works, and I appreciated you clearing it up, because the warrants, public safety, if you're sitting there thinking there's 1,500, 1,400, 1,200 warrants sitting out there, you're kind of concerned about what your sheriff's office doing concerning who's living in your community.
I want to say one other thing. That 1,671 warrants, that number's down from when I took office, which was over 2,000. So we have made drastic reductions.
Let me I told you earlier, and you did talk about it, the morale.
Mm-hmm.
And in the morale discussion with every single opponent came up the imbalance in pay scale.
Mm-hmm.
Sheriff, we have deputies hired in making more than this person we have. Now, I'm not saying we do. Okay, right. I'm just paraphrasing some things that were said in interviews. We've got administrative assistants making more than people in the command center. We got people that are new in the command centers. These are all things that I heard. Mm-hmm. And I guess one common theme was we have no pay structure in the sheriff's office, is what I heard. Mm-hmm. So address that to me and people that have been watching the other interviews that have heard that.
We absolutely have a pay structure within the sheriff's office. Brian, this is not, I didn't do you a nice neat spreadsheet on this, but this is, these are current figures. They've even got names attached. You can go back and pull open records request and see this. The thing that's being said is that I've got secretaries making more than deputies or even detectives.
Yes.
Okay, well, that might be true if it was not for the rules and regulations of the FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act. Secretaries are paid on anything that's over 40 hours a week is overtime. Law enforcement is paid, and I have both within the sheriff's office. I think you agree. I have civilian employees, and I have a whole host of law enforcement employees. Law enforcement is paid at anything over 86 hours in 2 weeks is overtime. So that's how you have to base their salary. Okay, looking at an hourly rate of pay, I do have I have four secretaries within the sheriff's office that operate out of different divisions of the sheriff's office that per hour make more than a brand new deputy starting out at $13 an hour. But when you multiply their hourly rate of pay by the number of hours that they are required to work, but prior to overtime, you get a yearly salary.
Right.
And if you look, this individual making this much, and she was not started there. She was here back a few years ago and got a few cost of living raises. That's why her salary's there. This individual has been there 21 or 22 years. She's been there as long as I have. That's why I believe tenure should count for something. That's all, that reflects cost of living increases. But if you look, when you annualize that hourly rate, they're making less than the deputy.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? And I only have one that makes more, and she's been here 21 plus years. She ought to be making more. She probably ought to be making more than me. And I'm going to give you this. I trust that you, if you want it. But I'm letting you know that information can be verified. This is not something I've dreamed up. This is verifiable information.
I think you know, and the opponents know. I have tried to do all the interviews without names. We live in this community, and I just never have seen any reason through any of the interviews to bring individuals into it if not necessary. Right. I've allowed all the opponents and yourself to discuss certain people if you wish. But me, myself, I have stayed away from wanting to get involved or bring people into it that are not running for the office in fairness to the community we live in. That being said, it was a common theme that came through the opponents that are running against you about the imbalance in pay structure. And even one comment, and again I say not to quote, but even one comment was, you know, there is no pay structure in the sheriff's office. So
I'm going to give you just off the top of my head real quick. A new deputy starts out with experience. A new deputy with experience starts out at $13 an hour. When he becomes a sergeant, which is the first level of supervision, he gets a 10% raise. If he's not a sergeant, but he becomes a detective, he gets a 10% raise. When the sergeant is promoted, he gets a 10% raise. If he goes to lieutenant, he gets a 10% raise or $37,000, whichever's more. Here's what happened. When I first took office, we started everybody off from scratch. And so therefore, when you were promoted, you went to a hard figure. It wasn't a percentage. You went to a hard figure. And that worked for about 2 years. We didn't look ahead to the fact that we were getting cost of living raises back then. And I didn't look ahead to the fact that at some point in time, that's not going to no longer work out, because you'll have someone that's had 3 cost of living raises, and he gets a 5-cent raise to become a supervisor in charge of 5 or 6 people. That's not fair. So then we did change to the percentage of 10%. We have a very structured pay structure. It's not as being described by my opponents.
You said not as being described by my opponents. Your opponents describe some of the command center as sitting around drinking coffee, and we don't need all the high-priced people, and we could cut a couple high-priced people out and put a couple more deputies on the road. Mm-hmm. You heard that?
I heard that.
What do you think of that?
I don't agree at all. I don't agree with that at all. And if you recall, the 2 deputies, or the 2, the 2 opponents of mine that made that statement, look where they're at in their career. They're both at about a 10-year range at the rank of sergeant. They haven't understood the full big picture yet. And it's not want a bunch of fat cat commanders sitting around drinking coffee and telling stories, and they don't have to do nothing because they're my buddies. That's not the case. Let me tell you something, Brian. My lieutenants on patrol, they regularly answer calls. My captain, my division commander of patrol, he answers calls. He backs deputies up. My captain, division commander in criminal investigations, he will work investigations. He assists his detectives with their investigations. My chief deputy, and it's really not what I need him doing, but sometimes he does it and sometimes he has to do it. Well, first of all, he and I both back deputies up from time to time on calls, but he'll go out and work traffic in high traffic complaint areas. He'll spend all day running radar in an area we've got a high complaint area for the speeders. Brian, the night of the tornadoes, as far as me, my job is sitting in an office and talking to the citizens of this county and going out and talking to citizens of this county. That is my job. My job is not to run around and answer the calls. But I still do that myself from time to time. I'm not too good to stop in the middle of Main Street in rush hour traffic and push a stranded motorist out of the road. I'm not too good to stop in the middle of school traffic down here at the elementary school and push a stranded motorist that completely shut down school traffic one morning, push that person out of the road. The night the tornadoes come through, as the tornadoes were coming through Gilmer County, not an hour later when all was clear, as they were coming through the county, I left my family. I made sure they were safe in the basement. But I left my family and headed to the 911 center, because the 911 center for a very short period of time completely lost all communications for a very short period of time. And just as soon as it came back up, which it was up by the time I got there, just as soon as it came back up, I went out to the area that was hardest hit down on 382, and I started assessing. It's almost crazy to try to explain what you do when you are driving down the road and it's just like this with trees. But my entire shift of deputies at that time were trapped on Rose Garden Road. They had been down there on a bad domestic. The entire shift was trapped because Rose Garden Road's the area that was kind of hit the worst. We had to call another shift of deputies to come in. And as they came in, I heard them. I heard them on the radio, and it was good to hear. As they came in, guess what? Not the first one of them, this was before we took their take-home cars away, not the first one of them lived in Gilmer County. You know what I heard as soon as they hit the county line? 10-8 in service, Gilmer County. I'll be out with 4 trees down in the road. They immediately started working as soon as they hit the county line. I was out with them moving trees, flagging motorists down, checking on people with the fire department. And finally, when all the communications was restored, we went back to a command structure again. Brian, I don't mean to appear I'm not mad. I'm not mad at my opponents for making all these accusations, but you know, some of these accusations, you know, I can handle. But the accusations that I don't care about my employees, I'm very passionate about that.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but the impression, and I don't want to say any one opponent did this, because I don't want them coming back that I singled out, but the impression, if I listen to all of them, was somewhat of, you know, the sheriff and the command personnel are here and the deputies are here, and there's a disconnect. So do you think you have a good relationship with the force of deputies, that the men and women that are out there on the day-to-day that are not in the command center?
I think I have a good relationship with them, and I would say this: the citizens ought to ask.
You know, I want to change gears. We don't have a lot of time. I thought that there was a lot of questions been asked in the last several weeks, and I thought that I should ask them to you, Sheriff Nicholson.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm going to sit and ask you those, I must allow you the time to discuss accomplishments. When did you become the sheriff of Gilmer County?
I became the sheriff in 2000. Well, I was elected in 2004. Took office January 1st, 2005.
What do you think are the biggest accomplishments since 2005 that you can share with the citizens today? What are the biggest accomplishments? And let me just start it out here. You have always said to me that the sheriff's department, you wanted a professional sheriff's department for the citizens of Gilmer County. I've heard you say that in many meetings or whatever.
That's what I ran on in 2004. Is I would give Gilmer County a professional sheriff's office, still a friendly sheriff's office, but a professional sheriff's office, and they have that. Brian, in 2008, we achieved our state certification. That's a voluntary program. We didn't have to do that. It holds us accountable to that professionalism that we say that we have. It keeps us in check on that. But we were only the 12th sheriff's office within the state of Georgia to get that. That's what I ran on. I ran on providing Gilmer County with a professional sheriff's office. And before the qualifying time on after my first term, they had that state certification. We have been recertified. We were recertified last year on our first recertification, and I maintain that Gilmer County has the finest sheriff's office in the state of Georgia. I feel that way, and it's not because of me. I'm not saying that. It's because of the folks under me all the way down to the very bottom. I have some great men and women. I know you've met some of them. I have some great men and women that work for the sheriff's office. It's not all about me. But it was my vision to see where the sheriff's office was going to go, and it went there.
Well, in 2005, what do the citizens of Gilmer County have today in 2012 that they didn't have in 2005, and what brought them there? What is different about the sheriff's office?
We have a very structured environment. It's not popular with some, and that's why we have lost some employees over the years. But we have a very structured environment. We have standard policies and procedures. We have a very structured environment. We have a chain of command, and we operate within, I don't want to say state standards, because I'm not talking about kind of state certification here. We operate the way a sheriff's office is supposed to operate. And, you know, we have improved the equipment, the technology and the equipment in the sheriff's office. Brian, if you looked at a graph on budgets, I'm going back to budget here for just a second. If you look at that for the entire time I've been sheriff, it would go like this, starting over here in 2005. It would go up, up, up until it got to 2009, and then it would come back down, down, down. And the first 4 years I was in office, it was about getting our manpower to the staffing level it needed to be. It was about getting our technology to where it needed to be, getting our equipment to where it needed to be. The last 4 years has been the most challenging. It's probably what I ought to be most proud of, is that we've been able to maintain the level of professionalism that we have with the amount of cuts we've had to make to our budget. I've had to cut $1 million since 2009, and then I also in 2009 lost an additional $400,000 worth of operating expenses. But we still maintain that level of professionalism, and we will continue to.
You put a list on the your website: increase patrols in neighborhoods, provide protective law enforcement, be available to talk to citizens, provide fiscal accountability, and courteous, professional, and well-trained officers. What do we have that we didn't have in 2005? And let me give you an example. Since you became sheriff of the county, what do we have the citizens? Are we able to process forensics better? Are we able to investigate a crime scene because we have more technology now, or we're trained, or we're staffed? What do we have that
we've got the department wide. We have a huge amount more training in 2012 than we had in 2005. And our specialized folks have the specialized training that they need. Yes, we have crime scene technicians. We have all of our detectives have been through all the schools they're supposed to be through. We have a field training officer program. It's probably one of the more beneficial things to me, is that we don't just get a brand new deputy out of the police academy and cut him loose in the car and say, go read that book, that policy book, and abide by that. We put him with a trainer, basically a trainer.
Does the county have a training officer? Somebody that's in charge of training?
Yes, I have a training officer, but now he's not the one what I'm talking about.
Okay.
We put him with field training officers. We put these new deputies with field training officers for 12 weeks, and they're evaluated, and they're taught how to do the job. You can't teach someone how to do a job of law enforcement in a school. You learn how to do that job actually out on the street. And our field training officer program has probably saved me more grief and saved this county more lawsuits than one could imagine.
You know, I looked at your website and I looked at a lot of the qualifications and trainings, and I've seen you have down that you have 253 hours of tactical and SWAT operation training, along with a lot of other training accomplishments, Sheriff Nicholson. But the county has a SWAT team?
The county does have a SWAT team. We don't broadcast it too widespread. There's no sense in giving away all your secrets. We do have a SWAT team.
Well, I didn't mean to give away a secret if I did.
Well, that's okay. One of the former members did the other day when he was interviewed. It's not a secret. It's been talked about.
Well, I don't even want to come across that there's any secrets.
It's okay, Brian. It's okay, Brian.
But I said to that individual, no, I didn't know we had a SWAT team. Is that necessary?
Absolutely necessary.
Okay.
And let me tell you what they are. Let me tell you what. You know, the former, or one of my opponents, the former SWAT team member, he kind of threw his guys under the bus the other day. His former teammates. I was surprised. I was shocked at that. He threw them under the bus when he talked about, well, they don't do much anyhow. When anything bad happens, we have to call someone else. You know what? That someone else has to call us from time to time too. SWAT teams have to assist one another, especially when you're in extended missions that last more than 2 or 3 hours. But we don't have a massive amount of people assigned to this thing. We can barely manage to have 6, and that's 6 that can be qualified and have the interest, and we can afford. We can foot the bill for about 6. He also said we spend $50,000 a year on them. They're lucky if they get $5,000 or $6,000 a year spent on them. Now, what they have had, their equipment that they do have that's above what all my deputies have, was paid for mostly by grants.
Well, you know, for me, Sheriff, and I say for me, I live in the county. So for me, a functioning sheriff's office that provides public safety in these tough economic times, which I know we're going through as a county and a nation, that we have no sacrifice in public safety, and we can feel comfortable in that. I would be one that would have to say, I don't know if we need it or not, but I'm going to entrust in an individual to say we do. So I don't know. It was brought up, and I really wanted to make light of the hours of training. You're on the Georgia Sheriff's Association, and you're on the Training and Standards Committee, right? And,
actually, that's dated material. I was on that. I'm no longer on that committee, but I am the Region 1 Vice President, which is an elected position within the Sheriff's Association.
right.
And I serve now on the Board of Directors of the Georgia Sheriff's Association.
Where does Gilmer County stack up in professionalism? I don't know. I don't want to call another county out, but as far as you said something like one day, not to quote you, Gilmer was like a big brother sheriff's department in some ways to some of the counties. You were proud to be able to help some of the other counties in the area. Am I right there?
That's correct. I remember the days when things happened here, and we had to always call for help. And Brian, I'm not going to say we don't still have to call for help. We call Cherokee County from time to time when things are bad, but you know what? Cherokee County calls us. Fannin County calls us. Union County calls us. They call us for help. And we send them, and when they call, we send them. We send our folks because that's what sheriffs do. That's how sheriff's offices operate with the low staffing levels that they do have until you get down in these metro areas. These North Georgia and South Georgia small county sheriffs and sheriff's offices, that's how they get by. When they need help, they call it, and they get it. But on the flip side of that, it's when somebody calls you, you send them. And I feel like we've kind of hit the role of big brother in this North Georgia area. We send folks to help out a lot.
Let's change direction totally here. I want to talk about drugs in Gilmer County and some of the history and where we're at today. I get an opportunity to talk to children in elementary schools, and it's very upsetting to me when I see these kids to know what kind of drugs are out there. I think we just got in the last legislative session, Sheriff, there was just a situation where we finally was able to take what they called legal weed. It was going around legal weed off the shelves. We're getting caught off guard as citizens. What next out there is these drugs people are doing. Share the battle of drugs in Gilmer County and what you're up against and what you've achieved in the Sheriff's Office.
Brian, I have the same concerns as you. I've got 3 children. I've got a 5th grader, I've got a 6th grader, and I've got a senior. They're mine. I love them. I care about them. I don't want to see them be off of drugs. I don't want to see them get hooked on drugs, and I don't want to see them be a casualty of the drug problem. So we're going to do everything just as we have done for the last 8 years, and even prior to that. I've been here 21 years, and I've been kicking in doors and taking drug dealers to jail for a long time in this county, along with some other pretty good investigators. And in 2005, it was the meth epidemic. That's kind of, I don't want to say it's gone away. There's still methamphetamine, but like you said, the bath salts and synthetic marijuana, that's new. It's just as dangerous as the meth problem. So we're going to be fighting those things. We are fighting those things. We fought just as the day after the new law was signed on the bath salts and the synthetic marijuana. We went to Larry Callahan, the chief of LJ, Greg Art, I believe Greg went, Chief of East LJ, the district attorney and some of his staff, and the drug task force, and me and some of my staff. We went around to every one of these individuals that were selling this stuff, and they'd already pulled it. They'd already pulled it from their shelves. But had they not, they knew the law was coming. Had they not, it was going to be pulled. We've already made a subsequent case. Law enforcement in this community has already made a case on that since that day. But, you know, I've got the same concerns as that you have, and everyone has. They don't want to be living next to someone. Nobody wants to be living next to someone selling drugs. Nobody wants to send their kids to school with the risk of that you know, they're going to get exposed to drugs, or send them to the swimming pool or anywhere. You know, basically, I hate to use this zero tolerance because that's such a definite statement that sometimes it's not that definite. But we have zero tolerance on drugs in this in the Gilmer County Sheriff's Office. We also, I like community involved in community in education, and I like community involvement. That's why I've got my school resource officers teaching the challenge program in the schools to the 5th grade students, teaching them the dangers of drugs. And sometimes we've had some students that's the first time they've ever heard that drugs are bad for them, is in the 5th grade when they're in those classes. I believe the drug court program of Judge Brenda Weaver. I'm not here. This is not a canned ad for Judge Weaver, but I believe Judge Weaver's drug court program has been a huge factor in helping some of the folks in this community break the cycle in their lives of drug abuse, methamphetamine abuse, alcoholism. So the drug war, it's a community-wide project. It takes everyone. But the law enforcement has to be there, and the law enforcement is there in Gilmer County.
Do you think, you know, there's two things, the Zell Miller Mountain
Parkway Drug Task Force.
Parkway Drug Task Force allows you to work with so many different agencies in the region.
That's right.
Has that been a success?
I think it has been a success, and I think it's just getting better. I think, you know, we had some kinks years ago when it first started, and I think we've got the kinks worked out, and I think it's working very good. I mean, not last week, but the previous 3 weeks in the newspaper, you've had 3 weeks of 2 drug grow houses and 1 meth lab, in those 3 weeks period, and that's not, you know, we don't put that stuff away and hold it and hide it until the election rolls around. That stuff that happened, and it was taken care of when it happened.
Methamphetamines in a meth lab. Just switching gears, what's it cost? Isn't there an environmental hazards to a meth lab? Isn't there a certain cost or a certain way they have to be cleaned up?
Well, the state, federal government's cut the funding that they provided. The state government's cut the funding that they provided. Now the counties have to foot the bill for cleaning these things up. But now, here's the only good thing of the evolution of meth. These one-pot meth labs that we got the other day, there's not a huge amount of cleanup on that. I mean, we might be looking at a bill of $1,000 on that, but if we get a full-fledged meth lab, the old kind, like we have had in Gilmer County, tens of thousands of dollars to clean those meth labs up, and we have no choice but to call these companies to come do it.
You know, I wanted to talk about drugs, and every county and every state in this country is struggling with that, and we could spend a whole series on talking about that. But we're going to have to get out here time-wise, and I don't want to miss a couple things. Your opponents made, and this is switching gears again, your opponents made several statements over their their interviews with sitting down with myself. They made statements that I can't answer to the citizens, the voters out there. Do you have any particular statements that were made to you or about the sheriff's office that we haven't addressed or you want to cover or that I've left out today?
Brian, you know, I asked you a few minutes, or told you a few minutes ago that, you know, I don't mean to, because I noticed a couple of times when I was talking, and you know me, we know each other.
Yes, we do.
And you know that sometimes when I talk with my hands, and I was getting kind of, it wasn't mad. I get passionate talking about the sheriff's office. If you'll recall, Brian, in November of 2011, I came to the last budget meeting right before the county commission set the budget. It was in the morning, and I was coming anyway because, and I didn't talk to my employees about this, just my top command staff. My patrolmen, slick sleeves, my detention officers, my dispatchers, they didn't know. I don't think they knew this. But I was going to that commission meeting that morning to fight for their jobs. I was being asked to cut an amount of money that would have took probably 6 or 7 of their jobs. And I'm not saying this for any other reason, but to make a point. It's being said that I don't care about my deputies, and I'm just a big fat cat sitting up in an office, and I don't care about my deputies. Brian, that morning, my mother passed away. She passed away as I was getting ready to go to that budget meeting. And, of course, I diverted and went to be with my family. And, you know, I needed to be with my family that morning. But when the funeral home came and they took my mom from her home, I told my family, I said, I need an hour. I got somewhere I got to be. And I went to that budget meeting and I fought for my employees' jobs. And I won that fight. I care about my employees. So yeah, there's a couple of statements. We've talked about most of the things. You know, I'm not mad. And when I talk about these things in this interview, it's not that I'm mad that they've said these things, although, you know, some of it stings a little when they talk about how I feel about my folks and my folks' morale. You know, that stings. But I'm passionate about the sheriff's office. But there's one statement that we've not talked about that I want to just kind of leave you with that disturbs me probably more than anything else that was said. And I'm not going to say who said it. But the statement was made. I left the sheriff's office because I didn't like the direction it was headed. Okay, well, my question would be, they didn't like the direction we were headed in an upward, professional, progressive manner. It concerns me if that individual was elected sheriff, where they're going to take the sheriff's office. I'm going to leave it with that.
What about what do the citizens have to look forward to in another Stacy Nicholson Sheriff Office administration? What do they have to look forward to this coming?
Well, I feel like that we're good. We're doing a good job. I feel like that we're doing the professionalism's there, but I feel like we can we can do more. My command staff and I have adopted the mentality of doing more with less. We've had to, because that's what we've done the last 3 years, is do more with less. But we're going to continue in a professional manner. There's not a lot of changing I will make to the sheriff's office. I'm not going to tell you I'm going to change this, that, and the other. You know, we're going to watch the money we spend. We're going to try to spend money as frugal as possible. But there is a couple of programs, and I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag on that because, well, I don't want somebody to steal it and start talking about it. But there's a couple of programs that will be free, not cost money. Actually, we're going to get a great benefit out of the sheriff's office, and the citizens will get a great benefit out of if we can we can get some structure put to it and headed in the right direction.
Well, before we close, why do you think the sheriff's office, why do you think you have so many opponents this time? What do you think? What do you think is bringing all these gentlemen out to decide that the sheriff should change in Gilmer County? What do you think is the biggest reason for that?
Well, I think you know, Brian, I don't know. I actually I kind of have a struggle within myself to answer that question right there. But I think, I don't know. I don't know why they're out there.
Anything exactly that we left out today that you came prepared to share with the voters? Because that is our #1 goal, is to get the voters enough information, or the most amount of information, to make their decision July 31st. So is there anything that you really came prepared today that you want to share with the voters before we close?
The only thing I would say is we talked about everything that I came prepared to talk about today. I had it my way and we went your way, but we still arrived at the same place. I'll say this to the voters of Gilmer County: everything that I have talked about today, all the facts and figures and studies and this and that, that's not off. I'm not just pulling that out of the air. Brian, I'm going to give you, and if I don't give you this information, you can come back and report me. I'm going to give Brian the documents to back up what I've talked about here today. That's one thing that I'm very adamant about. I don't like to say things that are misleading, intentionally misleading, and I'd like to say things that are straight down the line, and that's the way I am. That's the way I operate, and I would appreciate another 4 years to serve Gilmer County as your sheriff, and I would greatly appreciate your vote on July 31st or any of the few days in before there on the early voting, which starts July 9th.
Sheriff Nicholson, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and we wish you well in your campaign to continue to be the sheriff of Gilmer County. This is Brian with FYN Election 2012. We've been talking to Sheriff Stacy Nicholson, the incumbent, wanting to retain his office. Don't forget, vote July 31st. Go vote. That's your obligation here. We're bringing you the information, so don't say you don't know. Go vote.